And so here at the University of Washington, we're very clear with ourselves on why we exist. We exist to serve our researchers. We don't exist to make money, although tech transfer offices across the country have, in many cases, made as much as $1 billion on big hits for their universities. Vitamin D in milk at Wisconsin, NIH drugs in Georgia and NYU, Google for Stanford, Akamai for MIT. And we've had an innovation here at the University of Washington that generated hundreds of millions of dollars in royalties. But we're not here to make money. And given that it's a big hits business in terms of the revenue, you couldn't really manage the operations of a technology transfer office year over year on anything like that anyway. And we're not here to show the federal government that we can have an impact, although we think we ultimately will, or even the state that we're generating jobs, or to show the donor community, the financial and investment community around our university that we're open for business and creating opportunities for them. We focus on our researchers. We believe that increasingly academic researchers, especially the young ones in high demand areas, STEM, and high demand is really code for commercial relevance. They, especially given the media exposure, the media coverage of entrepreneurships and the glorification of entrepreneurship in this country and the making of money and the creation of startups, many academic researchers in high demand areas are very serious about the commercialization goals that they come to the university with, along with their research outcome goals or their teaching goals. In fact, some university researchers are here in part rather than in industry, because were they to join a large existing company, it would be usurping corporate opportunity to start a company of their own or to be pursuing something. And this is a novel opportunity for them in that they can be doing research, have 5 or 6 team members working underneath them, grad students, postdocs, and be thinking about what their own big idea is going to be, and it's legal. They're allowed to do it. In fact, it's even by us encouraged. So they take those goals very seriously. I think you go to colloquia these days and you'll hear young faculty asking each other if someone's starting a company around their work yet. And so it's a very relevant consideration in deciding which university to join. And we talk about that big number here at the university a lot, $1 billion or more in research. We have researchers here who are excellent at winning grants from the federal government, and they do cum to over $1 billion. But those grants go to the individual researcher. If they leave and go to Berkeley or Stanford, the grant goes with them. And so we need to think about what we're going to do to continue to attract and retain those researchers doing the very best work in the most compelling areas. And we believe that one of the things we have to do if we're to have those researchers who care so much about commercialization, for a lot of different reasons, impact is often one, we need to convince them that we're providing an unparalleled level of support, more than they would get at MIT, more than they would get at Berkeley or Caltech. And so when we think about what that really means, it's a lot more comprehensive than identifying a licensee, either an existing company or some entrepreneur or venture capitalist who's willing to take the technology forward. In fact, especially in the cases of startups, and that's, I think, the increasingly the goal of many faculty researchers, there are many things to think about. It's a complicated endeavor. There are conflicts of interest to manage. So you start a company, you've got grad students who contributed to the intellectual property, not surprisingly, they want to be part of that company. They're going to have an equity stake and options. You're going to be working there too. Suddenly, you have a dual relationship with your grad student. You have faculty and instructional duties toward that person here at the university. Most likely, you're going to have something to do with whether they're awarded their degree or not. And yet, you also have a tremendous investment, especially if you're a major stakeholder in the company, an equity holder, in that person continuing to do good work, maybe even more work at the company than at the university. And so that creates a conflict, and one, however, that we want to exist. We don't want our researchers to not start companies because that kind of conflict might exist, and we certainly don't want them to preclude our talented graduate students. We're also trying to retain and attract the best graduate student candidates from participating in the opportunity with them because of that conflict. And so what we want to do is identify and manage those conflicts and let it be known that, in fact, we welcome them. We understand that they're inherent to starting companies. We welcome them. The last thing we also want to do, since we want these companies to be successful, we want our faculty to be associated with successful companies, and the university's name, when there's attribution, which there is as part of our license, to be connected to successful companies. And since we hold equity as a university in most of these startups, we, of course, want the companies to be, again, successful. So we would never want to preclude someone who had a real contribution to make that might make that company more successful from participating. And so, so one of the things that we need to do as an office is make it really clear that actually, to some degree perhaps, not obviously, this kind of conflict is devoutly to be desired. We just want to identify it and manage it. And one of the ways we manage it, for example, is by identifying an impartial third-party faculty member at the university who could be checking in with the grad student to make sure that they're being treated appropriately, or with the junior faculty member who's going to have to worry about their partner being on their tenure committee. Likewise, often faculty take some kind of leave to be involved with their startup, or at least they decide they want to work a certain number of hours a week with a startup that they're creating or part of the creation of. And the state allows state employees to work up to about a day a week, I think. So it's either 20% or a day a week. I think it ends up being called the day a week because for a lot of these researchers, if you were to ask what 20% of their actual work is, it would probably be a whole lot more than a day, or 8 hours at any rate. But at any rate, that has to go through academic HR approval. And we want that experience to be a very easy and smooth one for the researcher. We want them to, at the end of this process, think of the University of Washington as having made it incredibly easy, so that they don't start thinking that the next time around they want to be working at MIT. We want to help with capital formation and finding the right entrepreneurs if they haven't identified them themselves. Often there's a postdoc who wants to be involved in a critical or vital role, but not always. And so we have people in our office with, I like to say Rolodexes that could reach the moon to help find these people. And then we also have to think a lot about what this researcher's work at the university is going to be like in comparison to their work at the company or the company's work. Because once you've licensed the technology, it can often be the case that, and I think most lay people don't think of this, that everyone else, including the researchers themselves and their colleagues and their grad students, is precluded, if it's an exclusive license, from working in that area. And so we have to make sure that the license is very thoughtfully constructed such that we're not licensing out anything where there are still improvements to be made, or where there are, that our license reflects some opportunity to make that happen. Oh, and IP landscape mapping. One of the things we're doing of late is also helping our researchers long before, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, there is any disclosure or invention or innovation, by having patent agents in-house. You can meet with them and talk to them about their area of inquiry and do research on the IP landscape around their work such that they can understand where there are foundational blocking patents, where there won't be freedom to operate for anyone who would license from them, but where there also may be white space, so that they can be thoughtful in designing their research projects and thinking about which research ideas they want to prioritize. Spacebar, yay.